Mm-hmm. It has been a while, wonderful people. I am sitting in my car in a parking lot. I will explain which parking lot. And I'm recording this with my laptop because my phone has no storage at the moment. And yeah. I feel like it's a sign. Maybe it's time to get an iPhone. Not that they don't struggle with storage either, but anyway, this is a life update. Remember, you are watching the process with Now. And if you are here for the very first time, my name is now Victoria Ranaka, and I am sharing my process of becoming the one whom God created. I believe that every single person has a story, and I want to share mine during the process and not on the mountaintop. So if you're here, I want you to know that you are not alone, so that when I'm going through it and you're going through it, we can keep each other accountable and keep holding on. So, life update, guys. It has been a while. I've been writing down YouTube topics. I'm like typing in my notes. I'm like, okay, this is what I'm gonna say. Like, this is like one sentence stuff. And I just haven't gotten around to recording it. It's time management. It's a whole lot of things that have been happening. Um, there was discouragement at play, there was tiredness at play, like physical tiredness at play. So I don't remember where the story begins, and honestly, I have not even had the time to look back at my recorded YouTube videos that have not been uploaded. So I will start from what I remember. And what I remember is that I was about to make a decision or contemplating making a decision about where I'm going to take my life, where I'm going to, this direction that I'm going to steer into, right? So, my lips are dry, but anyway, here we are. So basically, I volunteered in November to work for the family business. Um, Most of you don't know this, obviously, but my family, my father and my uncle started a buy and buy in 2010, and that has just been our family legacy. It has been um, the hope that our family needed in terms of financial breakthrough. So I'm very grateful for everything that I've had the privilege of experiencing in my life, education and just sustenance, man, as a young adult, because of the business that my father and my uncle own. So yeah, this is crazy. So in November 2023, which is now 3.5 months ago, as I'm recording this on the 5th of March, I sent my uncle a message and I said I want to help out at the business. All right. Rewind to how I got to that point where I was like, okay, I'm ready for full-time employment. But even so, when I offered, it wasn't meant to be full-time employment. I offered to work as a consultant for a couple of weeks slash months. And my timeline in my head was 3 months, right? Cool. Now let's go back to March last year, March 2023, right? Uh, March 2023, I make the decision, like I physically make the decision, not just in my mind, not just with God, but I physically start to pull away from fashion. I tell all my clients, okay, I'm no longer doing fashion. I tell the boutiques and my mentors, and I'm like, I'm no longer doing fashion. And I remember around this time, wow, almost probably to the date, almost to the day, almost. Um, um, I had like the last like market that I went to, and that's when I told my mentor slash landlord, I suppose, as well. I was selling in her shop, hence I call her my landlord. But I told her, like, I'm not gonna do this anymore, and I don't know whether it's a break or whether I'm quitting, but in my heart, I felt like I was quitting. So obviously, I feel like I might have shared some of this already about me leaving fashion. If not, I probably need to go into more detail about it, about how it happened. Although I did explain in my podcast, that is redefining with now, with NVR. Sorry, and then um, fine. I pulled out, sold my machines, uh, donated my equipment, threw away sketchbooks, threw away patterns. If you know what a pattern is, it's like the piece of paper that's supposed to resemble each component, each part of a dress. This is one of my own, by the way. So did all of that, and I was like, okay, we are starting from scratch, whole new career, whole new me, because I was just like the fashion girl. And for the longest time, I was okay with it until I wasn't anymore, until I started discovering more of myself, more of what it is that I want to do with my life, more about God, and also having that like my own internal battle of struggling with my identity being in my career, right? So I was like, okay, if my identity is not in my career, then I can change it at any time, right? Or that life can change it at any time, God can change it at any time, right? So cool. I then decided, okay, God, you want me to finish writing my book? Cool. I was like, we're going to do this whole thing. Like, we're going to do the whole shebang. Like, I'm not just writing a book and say peace out. Like, I'm going to build a personal brand so that also this book can sell, so that there's a story behind everything, and that I'm not just throwing out a book into the market and that's it, right? So I spent the whole of 2023 trying to build a personal brand strategically and just a little bit with efforts in terms of output. So putting out posts and things like that, starting here and there. I started my podcast. I started reintroducing myself on Instagram and telling people what my story is about. I came back to YouTube, all those kinds of things, right? Cool. But I was like, okay, sure, we were not balling out, but my business, my fashion was bringing in some sort of income, right? And fine, I had family support and all of that, right? But yeah, it wasn't enough. So it helped to have something that I was doing. It helped to have clients that I was consulting for. It helped to sell a few items every month, or an item or two every 2 months at the stores that I was supplying, right? So I was like, okay, God, like, I'm not going to be completely destitute. Like, I can't live on just this, right? Like, every month, and for how long? So I was like, okay, let me go work, go shopong ya ko gae. That was the mentality then, right? Like, let me help out, especially because they had opened a new branch and it wasn't doing so well. They opened it in Randburg, and I wanted to go help there and manage there, because I knew that my uncle was managing the one that is in the south of Joburg, right? So I was like, okay, cool. I'm gonna volunteer for that. I've been like, okay, I'm gonna help, but I was like, I don't know. Do you guys want me to help? You ain't really say none. That was my stance for the longest time, for the past couple of years, right? But now I was in that situation. When I say now, I mean last year, March. I was in that situation where I was like, okay, cool. I got to do something. Like, I spent at least by 2023, it was like 3 or 2.5 years working on my mental health, right? Healing from past traumas, going to therapy, taking medication, just dealing with those things that I hadn't dealt with as a teenager, right? And yeah, I was just like, yeah, I need to get back up now. And if I'm not going to be doing fashion, I need to be doing something, right? So that was my stance at that point. Fine. I hear Holy Spirit saying, not yet, but sometimes my not yet sounds like no. So I started because I didn't want to like hold my breath. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna write it off completely, right? So I was like, okay, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna work in that environment. It's probably not, ideal for me. All those kinds of things. I took myself out of it after Holy Spirit said not yet. And I kept thinking to myself, maybe he said not yet. But then I was like, no, he said no. You know, my brain was saying that because it's easier for me to hear no than to hear not yet. Story for another day. I carry on with the year, building my personal brand, finishing my book, getting in touch with publishers, taking content, putting out content, praying, learning to get deeper into my word because the year before that I had backslidden, trying to get back to church, and serving at church again, all those kinds of things, right? So um, recovering from breakups, a whole bunch of stuff. But to me, it felt like I still wasn't doing anything, but I was, right? Cool. Like I even joined like an accountability group, but more so it's like it had master classes as well, all those kinds of things. I started volunteering with a movement that I really believed in, and someone who like I felt like I had a connection with, and I was like, hey, I want to help you out, all those kinds of things. I didn't say it, but I was helping out. And all of that transpired in the year, and they had a big event in August. It was a worship night, and after that was over, it felt like, okay, God, now that this big event has happened, this thing that I committed to, that you placed in my heart to commit to, now that all that work is done, like now let me like go full swing into building my personal brand and all of that. But there was so much resistance, I will not lie. So much, like, fine, there was anxiety throughout the year, but it heightened in September. It heightened so much. It like gradually grew. The moment I closed my laptop and I finished writing my book, I cannot explain the amount of anxiety that was like is it a snowball that builds and builds? Was it an avalanche? What is it? Yeah, it's just like a small snowball, and then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So it hit its peak in September, and I was like, what in the world? And by that time, off medication, was feeling good, was exercising, like throughout like the winterish period. But so much happened last year. Um, like so much happened. I even lost my stepsister, and oh my gosh, like a lot happened last year. But anyway, now we're in September. All of that has happened, right? What happened in September of 2023? I can't really remember exactly. All I know is that I was feeling anxious. I was feeling anxious in September. I was feeling anxious in October. But throughout all of that, throughout the building of my personal brand and strategizing, I came to realize what I really want to do with my life, right? And it's not just one thing. It's about turning things that are seeds into trees, right? I feel like God gave me this gift that I can see the truth inside of something. I can see people's potential. It's like it's worked to my detriment in the past, with relationships, dating potential, etc. But honestly, like I got to a point where I need to lock my car. I got to a point where I was actually like, um, I can see clearly now the rain is gone. But the anxiety was coming from the execution of it, because it seemed like this giant thing. Like, I put together a strategy plan and everything, and I was like, okay, these are the different business sectors that I'm going to work on. These are the services that I'm going to provide. This is how I'm going to execute it. These are the steps, da da da. So clear. Nothing has ever been clearer in my entire life, right? The execution, guys. Post here, post there, record here, record there. I, excuse me, I did my hair in August 2 days before my stepsister passed away, with the intention of going to shoot the cover of my book. Like, guys, the amount of resistance about like, it's crazy, hey? And I remember having those braids in for close to 2 months, and I still didn't take photos for the cover of my book. Guys. And eventually I think I got to a point where I started like asking, right? I asked the only person I knew to ask about, can you help me push this forward? Because it needed finances. I needed to buy a mic, just something as simple as that, not just for YouTube, because I've been doing this without one, but for my podcast as well. And yeah, I couldn't get that help that I needed, and I was like, okay, God, now what? And in October, the now what started getting bigger and bigger and bigger, because I just had so many expenses. Like, I had medical expenses, all these things were happening to my body and my health. And I was like, God, I need a job. Anyway, then I was like, okay, this vision for my life, what I want to do, this turning seeds into trees, I can see it working in business, right? I find you can do it in all types of ways, but I knew that I had the experience of making small things great. I had the experience of, or at least helping them along the way of becoming great, right? I had that experience in various situations that you wouldn't even think would lead me to this point. But I was like, okay, these are the experiences that I've had, right? I've learned how to deal with people. I've learned how to, I've somewhat educated people. I've managed my own business. I've managed other people's. I've helped build other people's businesses. I'm good with branding. I proved to myself throughout the year that I was good with strategizing, even though I didn't think I was. All those kinds of things. I was like, okay, I know how to take something and make it better than what it already is. And I was like, okay, I want to harness that skill. But the jobs that I started looking for, started looking for a business strategist, a job as a business strategist. And I was like, I don't think that I'm qualified on paper for these jobs, but I know I'm qualified in the way that God has qualified me through the experiences that I've had, right? And I was like, okay, what would be a good stepping stone? What would be a good way to actually get to the job that I wanted, right? I did apply at one particular SMME, and as a consultant, right? As a consultant, as a strategist. But I was really, as a facilitator, I was willing to do anything, but they didn't have any jobs. And I was like, Lord, this is the only job that I'm willing to take, right? And then I started thinking again, like, I was just like, I hated the fact that, how do I say this without saying it? I started being more and more bothered by some of the problems that the family business was facing, right? Um, it's things that I knew about before, but more and more, I remember I even, I had to pray about some of these things, and, I'd pray and then that's it. But I felt like I needed to get hands on, and it felt like a collision, right? Of what I need, the experience, and that income versus what I know I can offer. which is everything that God has taught me, number one, and number two, wanting to do something about what I'm facing, right? Or what's facing me. It might be easy for anyone to turn a blind eye when somebody in your family is struggling, or when there's disputes, or when there's, all these kinds of things. But this is a pro and con that I have, right? This is a good and a bad trait, but I tend to internalize things. And when I would pick up on certain issues, look, nobody told me that this is what's happening per se, but I would pick up on certain issues and I'd be like, oh, that issue is probably because of this that's happening at the business. So anyway, my laptop's about to die now. So I'm working for my family business, and maybe I should post a reel of what it actually is, even though I don't really want to tell you or tell anyone. But I was like, you know what? Let me humble myself, Miss Designer, Miss, you know, what, all these things, right? I was like, let's put aside the accolades and let's go serve. And the thing about starting over or starting afresh or doing something new in your career is that you have to be willing to be a rookie, even if you were a pro in something else. I got that from somewhere. I don't know who says that. So yeah, so that's where I am right now. I should probably charge my laptop before it dies abruptly in the middle of a sentence. So I'm going to leave that at that for now. I'm going to do a life update part 2. So stay tuned. And thank you for coming back to my channel. If you made it through the end of this video, thank you so much for being committed to the process with me. And remember, you are not alone.